listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And your Niagara Frontier Reader Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, April 2nd. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont. And let us go to our weather. Cloudy and warmer today with a little rain, a high of 64. Cloudy, breezy, and warm tonight with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm, a low of 59. Mostly cloudy and windy tomorrow and a couple of showers, a high of 70. Saturday, a brief shower or two, and Sunday, rain in the morning, windy and cooler, a high of 48 and a low of 32. Well, let's be grateful. It could be snowing. We've had that plenty of Easters. And nationally, the high was in Laredo, Texas, 92, and the low was in Grand Morales, Minnesota, 7. Sky watch today, sunrise at 6:56 a.m. and sunset at 7:43 p.m. And we're not going to go into the snow derbies because I refuse to. That's all I have to say about that. And now to our front page stories. Refugee Nural Amin Shah Alam's death ruled a homicide. The death of the mostly blind Rohingya refugee in February, who went missing after being dropped off by federal agents miles from his home, has been ruled a homicide by Erie County Medical Examiner's Office. The finding is not an accusation that a crime has been committed. Rather, it means that the autopsy showed Nural Amin Shah Alam's death was caused by the actions of another person. Shah Alam's family and friends had been searching for him for days since he was released on bond from the Erie County Holding Center into the custody of agents from U.S. Customs and Border Protection. The agents dropped him off at a Tim Hortons restaurant on Niagara Street after its dining room had closed and did not notify his family or attorneys that they had done so. Shah Alam spoke little English and had no phone or other way to reach his loved ones. The Erie County Medical Examiner's Office determined that in this case, the cause of death was complications of a perforated duodenal ulcer precipitated by hypothermia and dehydration, and the manner of death was homicide, according to a statement from the Erie County Department of Health. Shah Alam's family was notified of the findings Wednesday, county officials said. The ulcer Shah Alam was diagnosed as having is referred to as a stress ulcer, County Commissioner Dr. Gail Bernstein stated. It's not a typical ulcer that we think of from drinking too much coffee or from anything else in our diet or from smoking. This is actually precipitated by our body's physiologic response to severe stress, and that stress was felt to be hypothermia, being in very cold temperatures, and dehydration, no access to fluids. As perforated ulcers cause severe pain and is a medical emergency that, if not addressed in a short period of time, can cause death, she said. Bernstein joined County Executive Mark Poloncarz at a news conference Wednesday afternoon to discuss the medical examiner's determination. They said that they were prohibited by law from sharing details about the information in the autopsy report, including details about Shah Alam's medical history. Erie County District Attorney Mike Keene's office has requested a copy of the autopsy report and will review the findings and any additional medical records, his office said in a written statement. Buffalo homicide detectives will review the medical examiner's findings and then send the case information they gathered to the Erie County District Attorney's Office, according to a spokesman for the city. Shah Alam, 56, was found dead February 24th on Perry Street near Key Bank Center, 5 days after Border Patrol agents dropped him off at a Black Rock coffee shop open only to drive-through customers. The Tim Hortons on Niagara Street was several miles from Shah Alam's home on the city's east side. When asked for a comment, a spokesman for Customs and Border Protection referred the Buffalo News to social media posts published by the Department of Homeland Security on February 26th and 27th, the week Shah Alam's body was discovered. The post on the X platform said that agents picked up Shah Alam when he was released on bond from the holding center because his file was flagged as a possible immigration hold. When the agents discovered that Shah Alam was in the country legally, they said that Alam, a husband and father of 5 sons, agreed to be left at the coffee shop. The statement said the agents determined that the coffee shop was safe and warm, and that Shah Alam, who was wearing orange soft booties on his feet that are issued to jail inmates, showed no signs of distress, mobility issues, or disabilities requiring special assistance. A ruling of homicide as a matter of death in this context is based on clinical information for vital record purposes, not legal ones, and does not imply intent or a determination of criminality, Burstyn reiterated at Wednesday's press conference. Keene said his office's review of the circumstances of his death remain ongoing. We are committed to seeking the truth and upholding justice. As the district attorney, I must preserve the integrity of the investigative process to ensure a thorough and impartial review of all evidence in this manner, Keene said in a statement. While I recognize the demand for answers sought by Mr. Shah Alam's family and our community, it would be inappropriate to comment on the specifics of the autopsy report or the status of any investigation. State Attorney General Letitia James issued a statement following the medical examiner's announcement. My heart is with Nural Amin Shah Alam's loved ones today, as it has been since we first learned of his tragic death. Mr. Shah Alam fled genocide to build a life in this country. Instead, he was abandoned and left to suffer alone in his final hours. No New Yorker should be treated this way. My office is continuing our review of the circumstances and treatment that led to Mr. Shah Alam's death. Governor Kathy Hochul also released a statement. As more details of this case emerge, I want to be crystal clear. Every individual involved in the death of Mr. Shah Alam must be held fully accountable. My team spoke with District Attorney Keene within the past hour. I am glad to hear he is investigating. To ensure a fair and impartial investigation, the Erie County District Attorney must continue his investigation and, if warranted by the evidence, prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. In a statement Wednesday evening, Buffalo Mayor Shaw Ryan called the medical examiner's finding about Shah Alam's death deeply disturbing. What happened here reflects a fundamental failure to treat a human being with basic dignity and care, and it demands accountability, he said. Terrence Connors, an attorney representing Shah Alam's family, also released a statement which quoted the medical report. The report of the medical examiner confirmed our understanding that Mr. Alam was placed in a hostile environment from which it could not be expected that he could extricate himself, he said. We intend to focus on the failures so this never happens to anyone else. The autopsy report was finalized Tuesday, and county officials spoke to Shah Alam's family by phone Wednesday, Burstyn said. They also received a copy of the report.
President targeting NATO over rejection of role in Iran war. President Trump says he's strongly considering pulling the United States out of NATO, ratcheting up his criticism of European allies and exposing a wider rift in the transatlantic alliance, this time over the Iran war. While Trump's talk of a possible NATO pullout dates back years, the comments to the Telegraph newspaper in the UK, published Wednesday, were among the clearest and most disparaging yet, suggesting that the fracture has deepened perhaps to a point of no return. Asked whether he would reconsider U.S. membership in the alliance after the conflict of the Middle East ends, Trump replied, "Oh yes, I would say it's beyond reconsideration." NATO didn't provide immediate comment. The United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that his government was fully committed to NATO and called it the single most effective military alliance the world has ever seen. Many European leaders have felt political pressure over the war, which faces opposition in their countries and has sent petroleum prices soaring, as Iran has effectively shut the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway between Iran and Oman, through which about 1/5 of the world's oil passes. Whatever the pressure on me and others, whatever the noise, I am going to act in the British national interest in all the decisions I make, he said Wednesday. Long simmering tensions within the alliance have bubbled up again over the war. As energy prices have spiked, Trump has been desperate to get countries to send their ships to the Strait of Hormuz. He has called NATO allies cowards. Even since his first term, Trump has urged the allies to assume greater responsibility for their own security and spend more on defense. He has argued that the U.S. has done more for them than the other way around. A U.S. pullout would essentially spell the end of NATO, which flourishes for decades under American leadership. Speaking Tuesday on Fox News, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said, "I do think, unfortunately, we are going to have to re-examine whether or not this alliance has served this country well for a while as..." I think I read that wrong. "I do think, unfortunately, we are going to have to re-examine whether or not this alliance that has served this country well for a while is still serving that purpose." Rubio raised questions with interviewer Sean Hannity about whether NATO has become a one-way street where America is simply in the position to defend Europe. But when we need the help of our allies, they're going to deny us basing rights and they're going to deny us overflight. The criticism from Rubio would raise concerns in the alliance about whether the U.S. under Trump may no longer consider NATO as worth the time, money, and personnel that Washington has invested in it. The very mention of a pullout could weaken the alliance's deterrence, particularly with Russia. It relies on ensuring that Russian President Vladimir Putin believes NATO will retaliate if he decides to one day expand Moscow's war in Ukraine. Francois Heisberg, senior advisor for Europe at the International Institute for Strategic Studies think tank, called Trump's tough new rhetoric a new step. It's a very disturbing one. I think that no member of NATO signed on to join an offensive alliance. Ukraine, supported in large part by Europe, would be the first casualty of a U.S. pullout. He said European countries would have to increase their defense spending, speed up procurement, and take time to replace what the United States might no longer deliver. The UK is working on plans that could help assuage Trump. On Thursday, British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper will host a virtual meeting of 35 countries that have signed up to help ensure security for shipping in the Strait of Hormuz after the war. Starmer said military planners will also work on a post-war security plan for the strait. NATO is built on Article 5 of its founding treaty, which pledges that an attack on any one member will be met with a response from them all. As the Iran war has spread, missiles and drones have been fired toward NATO member Turkey and a British military base on Cyprus, fueling speculation about what might prompt NATO to trigger its collective security guarantee and come to their rescue. The alliance hasn't intervened or signaled any plan to. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who has voiced support for Trump and Washington's role in the alliance, has been focusing mostly on the Russian-Ukraine war, since Ukraine borders 4 NATO countries. NATO operates uniquely by consensus. All 32 countries must agree for it to take decisions, so political priorities play a role. Even invoking Article 5 requires agreement among the allies. Turkey or the UK can't trigger it alone. The U.S. can't just simply walk away all that easy. A Defense Act passed under President Joe Biden 2 years ago prevents an American president from withdrawing from NATO without support of 2/3 of the Senate or under another act by Congress.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour, and we will go to our editorial. Environmental priorities. 2 types of environmental reforms are being discussed in Albany as part of the state budget process. Governor Kathy Hochul's proposal to streamline the State Environmental Quality Review Act is meant to speed up approvals for housing projects without sacrificing longer environmental reviews when they are needed. The other change proposed by Hochul, delaying essential action to reach New York's climate goals, may have the backing of the fossil fuel industry and many state business groups, but is strongly opposed by Democrats in both houses of the legislature. That's understandable given the amount of work it took to enact a national leading climate change mitigation law through the Community Leadership and Climate Protection Act of 2019 has yet to be implemented in any meaningful way. And it must be noted that no formal legislative language on Hochul's modifications has been released. In contrast, the SECOR reforms have been widely communicated and are already supported by mayors and other municipal executives throughout the state. Hochul included the reforms in her executive budget, as did the Senate, though with changes in its one House budget. It's estimated that SECOR can add an average of 2 years to construction timelines, as well as make housing more expensive. Hochul does not want to remove environmental protections when they're needed, as with building on previously undeveloped land, such as forests, farmlands, or near wetlands. But projects that already conform to local regulations and permit requirements for zoning and air and water quality, among others, were being built on previously developed parcels that would be exempt from SECRA. Local governments would be in the driver's seat for categories of development including homes, child care centers, clean energy, and other projects. While there may be some pushback against this, New Yorkers win if anything that increases affordable housing makes it through the budget process. Even if you've been paying close attention, it's difficult to parse what exactly will be happening to New York CLCPA provisions. That's because the changes that Hochul clearly wants to have stated through public appearances and a recent op-ed, not in detailed legislative language. As a result, many members of legislature who might be pushing back against changes say they are waiting for a concrete proposal. But the basics of what the governor is proposing are clear enough. There would be no state action such as a cap and invest program to enforce emission reduction targets until 2030, which is one of the deadlines of the CLCPA. Obviously, that deadline won't be met. The governor also wants to change the way that emissions are measured, which is concerning because it would lessen the importance of reducing methane emission from natural gas. It's unclear how this would promote affordability, which is Hochul's signature goal. Emission-free energy is cheaper than fossil fuel energy, Anyone driving an EV these days can attest to that. New York would do better to double down on its large-scale renewable energy projects, as other states have done, despite post-pandemic cost increases. Hochul's proposals to rein in utility costs with regulation reform would help residents more than weakening the CLCPA, and there she has some agreement with her budget partners. The Assembly goes so far as to propose a 2-year moratorium on electric and gas rate hikes. That has a clear ring of affordability. Whatever happens with the CLCPA, it shouldn't happen through the usual Albany closed door deal pushed through under budget pressure. As stated by Meg Ahern, Executive Director of the New York Public Interest Research Group, the climate law in 2019 was not passed by placing a guest editorial in the press. And this is an issue of such great consequence, it cannot be done in secret. New Yorkers deserve an open debate.
And our Another Voice article is on elections, and it's written by Maury Baggiano, who's a lawyer, and he is a published legal author and a member of the Supreme Court Bar. Mail-in vote decisions must be left to states. On March 23rd, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in Watson versus Republican National Committee, a case challenging the legality of a Mississippi law that allows absentee ballots, that is, mail-in votes, postmarked by Election Day to be counted as long as they are received up to 5 business days after the election. The court's ultimate decision, of course, could have an enormous impact on the upcoming midterm elections. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals holding should be overturned by the Supreme Court, and the National Republican Committee's case against Mississippi should be dismissed with prejudice. The judiciary lacks the legal and/or constitutional basis to hold the Mississippi law unlawful. According to 2 U.S. Code 7, the Tuesday next after the first Monday in November in every even-numbered year is established as the day for the election in each of the states and territories of the United States of representatives and delegates to the Congress, unquote. This statute merely defines Election Day for our congressional representatives. Neither it nor any other federal statute specifically addresses when mail-in votes must be received, arguably only when they must be cast, that is, postmarked. Accordingly, the determination when mail-in votes must be received in order to be counted is left to the states to determine, not the judiciary. The Elections Clause in the Constitution, which is Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1, unequivocally states, quote, "The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations," unquote. Since Congress has not chosen to regulate when mail-in votes for our congressional representatives must be received in order to be counted, there is no conflict between federal law and state laws over this issue. Furthermore, neither the federal executive nor the federal judiciary has been granted the authority under the Elections Clause to regulate when mail-in votes for congressional representatives may be counted. By constitutional mandate, only the U.S. Congress may do so, but it hasn't.
And our editorial cartoons from Michael Ramirez of Creators Syndicate. It is one frame. It is someone landing on the moon, and he is making the statement, that's one long step and a lot of money to do something we did 57 years ago. And the second one is from John Deering. It's one frame. It's a lady on her computer listening to President Trump on the television, and he is telling allies, go get your own oil. And her statement is, so he's saying, I broke it, you bought it. Well, that's a switch. That's your cartoons for today.
And our first opinion piece is written by Leonard Green. He's from the New York Daily News. Having Trump's name on currency makes no sense, and he spells sense C-E-N-T-S. Which of the four faces would you erase from Mount Rushmore? Is George Washington still worthy? Do we still like Lincoln enough? Would we take down Thomas Jefferson? Or would we remove Teddy Roosevelt? Because it's only a matter of time before our egomaniac president sends federal workers to South Dakota to sandblast the national monument to make room for his carved portrait. In the meantime, President Trump will settle for having his signature on every piece of cash you fold. As if hijacking the iconic Kennedy Center wasn't enough, the commander-in-chief wants to put his name on something else, the U.S. dollar. Under a plan promoted by the nation's Treasury Department, Trump's signature would appear on all new U.S. paper currency, a first for a sitting president. While many clear-thinking people oppose the proposal, at least one elected official was able to put the idea in perspective. At least it will remind us who to thank when we pay more for gas, food, and goods and groceries. Senator Shontel Brown from Ohio said in a tweet on X, "In Claude we trust." Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said he wants to roll out the new greenback as part of the nation's semi-quintennial, the country's 250th anniversary being celebrated later this year. There is no more powerful way to recognize the historic achievements of our great country and President Donald J. Trump than U.S. dollar bills bearing his name, Bessent said. Bessent's name as Treasury Secretary already appears on the currency. Under the new directive, he would share dollar bill space with Trump. In December, the U.S. Mint published draft designs of the 250th anniversary $1 coin to honor Trump, whose popularity has been plummeting. Unless government money minds are trying to hurt the value of the U.S. dollar even more, putting Trump's name or face on any U.S. currency makes absolutely no sense. Ironically, the last proposed currency change was basically blocked by the Trump administration. That was when a proposal was made to put the face of abolitionist Harriet Tubman, the freedom-fighting Underground Railroad conductor, on the $20 bill. That effort stalled during Trump's first term. Senator Jeanine Shaheen from New Hampshire, who wrote the Tubman $20 bill legislation, said adding the president's signature is another in a long line of bad Trump ideas. Since Trump has been in office both times, he has put his brand on every relic and corner of government, from federal buildings to military warships. A government website designed to help people buy prescription drugs at discounted prices was branded Trump RX. And months before joining Israel in the war against Iran, Trump added his name to a nonprofit think tank, the United States Institute of Peace. But his biggest hijacking display came when he took top billing on the renowned Kennedy Center, a move that forced several outraged performers to cancel their appearances. Trump shouldn't even have his name on Monopoly money. Wait, too late for that. Before he became president, the game maker featured Trump's name and likeness in a limited collector's edition. That version needs an upgrade with a card that reads, "Go to jail. Go directly to jail. Do not pass Mar-a-Lago. Do not collect any more money for ICE."
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 29 minutes after the hour, and we will go to our next opinion piece coming from Barbara McQuaid of Bloomberg Opinion. Trump's rogue judge's rhetoric breaches the oath he took. President Trump asked Congress last Wednesday to pass legislation that cracks down on rogue judges. Trump has repeatedly blasted jurors who issue decisions he doesn't like, even calling them criminals and a disgrace to our nation. But demanding that the legislative branch enact laws that punish the judiciary is a breathtaking breach of the president's oath to support and defend the Constitution, which creates our three separate and co-equal branches of government. Trump's recent attacks came after the Supreme Court struck down his tariffs, which he has used to wield economic power against foreign governments. Last month, by a 6-3 majority, the justices held that the International Emergency Economic Powers Act did not authorize the president to impose tariffs, a power otherwise reserved for Congress. Among those joining the majority were two of Trump's own appointees, Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett. Of course, justices and judges are expected to decide cases objectively based on the facts and the law, without regard to partisan politics or the wishes of the president who nominated them. But this notion seems foreign to Trump with his transactional style of governing, like a mob boss who expects blind loyalty in exchange for any favor. Trump said of Gorsuch and Barrett, "They sicken me." Disagreeing with the court's decision is nothing new. Judges make difficult and consequential decisions every day, and one party to a dispute will always be disappointed with the outcome, sometimes deeply so. All Americans are free to disagree with a legal decision and evenly open criticize it. But when we do, we already have legal recourse available. Losing parties may appeal a lower court decision to a higher court. Even critics of the Supreme Court have lawful options for redress. Congress can enact what is called a legislative fix, revising statutes or passing new ones to work around or override an unpopular decision. When the court decides a constitutional question, the founding document can be amended. It's a difficult task, to be sure, as the founders intended it to be, but it has been successfully completed 27 times. What Trump is doing is different. His proposed legislation would target the judges themselves for punishment. It seems likely that Trump knows he will not get his wish. Even a Congress that has been largely submissive during his second administration would surely not go so far as to retaliate against judges based on their case decisions, a move that would wreak havoc on the separation of powers. But the president's public statements nonetheless risk the independence of the judiciary, an essential pillar of democracy. By attacking judges and justice who rule against him, Trump is sending a message to the others: rule my way or else you'll be next. While one would hope that judges would make decisions based on facts and law and not on fear, they are human beings with families who must consider the very real danger they face in today's political climate. If Trump's words cause a judge to pull their punches in a written opinion, or even avoid thorny legal questions altogether by punting on difficult issues, the public will have lost an important check on abuses of executive power. Chief Justice John Roberts Jr. has been a vocal critic of Trump's aggressive tactics and recently called personal attacks on judges dangerous. He said that while we welcome scrutiny and debate about a court's legal decisions, attacks on judges themselves have got to stop. Trump's rhetoric only adds fuel to the fire. The U.S. Marshals Service investigated threats against judges in 2024 and discovered that the number of incidents had more than doubled by 509 from 3 years earlier. The number of incidents appears to be escalating. The Marshal Service reports that for the first 3 months of 2026, it has investigated 241 threats to federal judges. Roberts devoted his 2024 year-end report on the judiciary to the danger of growing threats against judges, writing, violence, intimidation, and defiance directed at judges because of their work undermine our republic and are wholly unacceptable. In demanding legislation to punish judges, it is the president who is going rogue.
And our final opinion piece is by Jill Burkham. She's from the Minnesota Star Tribune. Deaths in Minnesota were months ago, yet still no accountability. An alarming question remains unanswered after the deaths of Minnesotans Renee Good and Alex Preddy earlier this year. Does the United States now have a federal immigration force that can kill Americans in front of the public, yet operates beyond accountability's reach? Good, a 37-year-old mom and poet, and Preddy, a 37-year-old nurse, were fatally wounded during encounters with federal immigration agents in Minneapolis during the Department of Homeland Security's Operation Metro Surge. More than 2 months later, the 3 agents involved have faced few, if any, public consequences. No charges have been filed. It's also unclear if any other mechanism of accountability has been brought to bear. Questions that remain unanswered by their agencies. Have they faced any discipline? Are they back on the job? And if so, where? If quiet reassignment is all that has happened after the Minnesotans' death, it is an affront to their families and to anyone who believes that taking a life should carry consequences. The 2 agents identified as involved in Preddy's death were U.S. Customs and Border Patrol agents. The agent who allegedly shot Good worked for the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The unanswered question about their whereabouts takes on added urgency as the Trump administration deploys ICE agents to relieve passenger screening backups at some airports. While ICE has not been deployed to the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport, I can't help wondering if the ICE agent seen on video shooting Good, and who may have spewed a profane, dehumanizing slur about her afterward, could be assisting in another airport. I have reservations about this agent being in a position of authority in this situation, and I'd guess others might too. I asked ICE and Homeland Security recently where the agent is now working, and specifically whether he's assigned to an airport. Neither responded to my request last week. I asked CBP for similar information about the 2 agents involved in Preddy's death. CBP did not respond, but spokesperson Hilton Beckham didn't address my questions. Instead, he strongly implied my inquiry was an attempt to dox the agents, putting them at risk. It's important to note that the names of local police officers are typically made public after fatalities. Also, it wasn't 2 federal officers who suffered mortal wounds in Minneapolis, but 2 members of the public who died in encounters with them. Outrageously, information about the agent's status isn't just unavailable to the public, it's also being actively withheld from the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, the state agency responsible for investigating officer-involved shootings here. I sounded the alarm about the lack of cooperation with the BCA in a February column. Nothing has changed. We have not received any of the information we are seeking, a BCA spokesman told me last week. The BCA is commendably pressing on to investigate the deaths of Good and Preddy. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty is also pursuing this, but it's tough to pull it off without all the evidence gathered. The lack of cooperation is unusual, as University of Minnesota law professor Amy Sweezy told me recently. The longer it goes on, the more it looks like federal officials don't want the full story to see the light of day. Federal officials are also refusing to share evidence in the shooting of another man, Julio Sosa Celez, Sosa Celez is a Venezuelan national living here who was shot by a federal agent on January 14th. The BCA, Moriarty in Hennepin County, and the Minnesota Attorney General's office have had to resort to a drastic maneuver to access the evidence in all three shootings. They filed a lawsuit March 24th to compel the Trump administration to turn over this vital information. The complaint is an infuriating read. Key evidence that the federal government is declining to share with Minnesota law enforcement includes the vehicle, according to the complaint, is shrink-wrapped and currently held in an FBI storage facility in Brooklyn Center, yet, quote, has never been examined or processed, unquote. BCA agents have obtained a search warrant for it and have repeatedly asked the FBI to provide them with the vehicle or allow the agency to execute the search warrant on it. FBI officials have either refused or not responded to these requests, the complaint states. The Minnesota parties filing the lawsuit also contend that the government broke its word repeatedly about sharing evidence with state investigators. The complaint does not blame federal agents on the ground for the lack of cooperation. Instead, it argues that these decisions come from the top leadership ranks. The federal government's documented fabrications in the Sosa Celez shooting underscore why an independent investigation, not one led by the agencies employing the agents who shot these three Minnesotans, is imperative. As the Star Tribune has reported, DHS officials initially claimed Sosa Celez and another man had ambushed an agent who shot him, prompting the agent and fire in self-defense. Sosa Celez was charged, but the charges were dropped after the federal government's narrative collapsed in court, refuted by video surveillance, crime scene photos, and witness statements. There is a deeply disturbing pattern emerging here, one that points to more than just a cover-up. Federal officials directing these efforts appear to believe that they and their agents are a privileged class to be shielded from the consequences of their actions, instead of being held to the same standards that everyone else would be.
AI data centers driving big tech job cuts. Oracle is reportedly laying off thousands of employees, adding to an already long list of tech giants cutting staff while spending hundreds of billions of dollars on AI data centers. Microsoft laid off 15,000 people last year. Amazon axed 16,000 jobs in January. Atlassian let go of 10% of its workforce as part of its AI pivot. Block shed 40% of its staff, claiming AI could do much of the basic coding work it needed. Meta, which has explicitly set out to create a godlike superintelligent AI, reportedly laid off 700 employees while boosting a stock incentive program for a handful top executives. Big tech executives have long warned that AI would lead to job losses. They perhaps just forgot to mention those losses wouldn't necessarily come from actual AI tools replacing human workers, but rather from the same old boring business 101 reasons as the pre-AI era. When you spend too much, you usually end up having to cut costs. Executives have been quick to tie their staff cuts to AI in the most oblique possible terms to avoid the harsher sounding reality. Many tech firms overhired during the pandemic, and now they are being squeezed by higher interest rates, inflation, and their leaders' own decisions to gamble on vague projections of AI's potential. It wasn't immediately clear how many of Oracle's roughly 162,000 staff were affected. CNBC citing two people familiar with the matter, but the number in the thousands, and TD Cowen analysts recently projected Oracle would lay off up to 30,000 people, among other measures to shore up its finances. So while we don't yet know what Oracle's strategy is with the layoffs, we know that the company badly needs cash. It's been trying to remake itself into an AI power player on par with Microsoft and Amazon. That plan hinges on an expensive endeavor, building data centers to power AI services for customers like OpenAI. Last month, Oracle pledged to raise up to $50 billion this year through a mix of debt and equity. In the early days of AI fervor on Wall Street, investors cheered Oracle's ambition, sending the stock up 50% in 2023 and 60% in 2024. But as the company has taken on billions in debt and build-out costs for data centers have gone up, the mood has shifted. Oracle's stock has fallen 54% since its September peak. Bottom line, the white-collar bloodbath forecast by tech luminaries has long been presented as the inevitable result of widespread AI adoption that makes typical computer jobs obsolete. There's no evidence AI is meaningfully replacing workers at scale. However, so far the only major labor disruption has come from company leaders who have tied their businesses to a technology that has yet to live up to its own hype.
Huafeng Rubber completes purchase of old Sumitomo site, and this is by Matt Glenn, who's a news staff reporter. Huafeng Rubber on Wednesday completed its purchase of Sumitomo's former manufacturing facility and property in the town of Tonawanda, putting the site on a path to revival. Sumitomo Rubber USA closed its Sheridan Drive tire-making complex in November 24, eliminating about 1,500 jobs and creating uncertainty over the future of the property. Taiwan-based Huafeng Rubber acquired the site through HF Industrial Park. The company plans to transform the sprawling site into an industrial park for manufacturing, assembly, logistics, and technology business operations. HFR intends to use a portion of the site for its own manufacturing operations and attract other companies to fill the rest of the space. HF Industrial Park will become home to a dynamic mix of local, national, and international company operations while ensuring a robust reuse of the long-standing and important regional industrial site, the company said in a statement. The company views this as a natural evolution for the former Sumitomo Rubber USA plant location and believes this property can successfully transform into a future hub of manufacturing activity and innovation that will contribute to both the Western New York and New York State economies. HFR produces a range of rubber products including power sports, bicycle, industrial, agricultural, passenger car, specialty, truck, and bus tires. HFR said its team has begun their efforts to identify potential tenants and is excited to bring the facility back to life. After Sumitomo closed the plant in 24, economic development organizations turned their attention to finding a new user or multiple users to fill the void. County Executive Mark Poloncarz said the county and its partners are excited for the next steps to come. When I impaneled the Subimoto Task Force following the plant's closure announcement in November 24, a deal of this nature was at the top of our list of preferred outcomes: to quickly find a private user to take over the site and spare it from decay and disuse. Peter Ahearns, executive director of the Buffalo Niagara Manufacturing Alliance, said HFR operating in even part of the plant is going to ensure that buildings don't go vacant for too long, where it goes into disrepair. Transitioning the former Sumitomo site opens up opportunities for other users in a market that has seen a shortage of readily available industrial space. Ahearns said he hopes to see other parts of the site become an incubator for other manufacturers, as well as some research and development operations. He compared the planned revival of the Sumitomo site to how the former Bethlehem Steel property in Lackawanna has been revived in stages over the years by multiple users. Grant Loomis, President and Chief Operating Officer of the Buffalo Niagara Partnership, said the site is perfect for manufacturing based on the facility and its access to water and power.
As part of our newspaper reading, we will now present today's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Balin Mamie Nee Fiore. Clune Phyllis Nee Klein. William Bill Gosh. Topfer Richard. And on the national scene, Stephen Lewis, Canada's former ambassador to the United Nations and a lifelong social activist and former politician. He was 88. He led multiple posts with the United Nations after his 4-year stint as Canada's ambassador, including as a special advisor to then Secretary General Kofi Annan. Once again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555.
And now we'll go to our astrology column, Royal Stars. Happy birthday for Thursday, April 2nd. You are strong-willed and direct. You are a generous idealist. This is a year of teaching and learning for you. Take time to renew your spiritual or religious beliefs. The stars show the kind of day you'll have: 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. In perusing the astrology notes, all your days are either going to be positive or average. Aries, average day. The moon is opposite your sign today, increasing your focus on your most personal relationships. Be careful that you don't act subconsciously without thinking. Tonight, be agreeable. Taurus, positive day. This is a tricky day because you might want to have to put the interests or welfare of someone else before your own. This doesn't mean you're being a martyr. It's just what's happening. Tonight, work. Gemini, positive day. Today it's easy to feel in harmony with yourself and to be able to do whatever you have to do. It's a good time for any kind of group activity. Tonight, enjoy social outings. Cancer, average day. If possible, you'll prefer to retire by yourself to your own private place today because you need to contemplate your navel. Tonight, cocoon at home. Leo, positive day. Today you have a strong urge to speak to someone. You need to be heard. Your challenge, of course, is to find someone who will take a moment to listen to you. Tonight, an earnest conversation. Virgo, an average day. Today it's easy to identify with what you own, which is why you might be reluctant to lend something to someone. Tonight, take care of your possessions. Libra, positive day. Today the moon is in your sign, which makes you more emotional than usual. Tonight, you're strong. Scorpio, average day. Solitude and the enjoyment of your own privacy will give you pleasure today. You need to take a moment to catch your breath. Tonight, solitude. Sagittarius, positive day. This is an excellent day to take a moment to talk to a friend or perhaps a member of a group and share your hopes and dreams with someone. Tonight, friendships. Capricorn, average day. You're high vis today, which means people notice you more than usual. In fact, today some people will know personal details about your private life. Tonight, be modest. Aquarius, positive day. Today you want a bit of adventure. You need some stimulation. Therefore, do what you can to break free from your usual routine. Tonight, explore. And Pisces, an average day. Today, your emotional experiences are more intense than usual, especially in your encounters with others. Tonight, check your finances.
And today in history. In 1912, President Woodrow Wilson asked Congress to declare war against Germany, saying the world must be made safe for democracy. Congress declared war 4 days later. And in 2005, John Paul II, the Polish Pope born Karl Joseph Wojtyla, died in his Vatican apartment at age 84. He was the first non-Italian pope in over 450 years. John Paul became one of the most influential leaders of the late 20th and early 21st centuries, while playing a crucial role in the fall of communism in Europe and the former Soviet Union. And a little brief note, rock music event set for April 19th will benefit organ donation group. The Kensingtons with Cheryl Ferris, the Informers, and 3 other local bands will perform at an April 19th event at Sportsman Tavern to benefit an organization that encourages organ donations. The event will benefit 1-850 organization, a nonprofit dedicated to increasing awareness about the need for organ donations in Buffalo and throughout New York State. The Twang Gang, through Thurman Brothers Band, and FM Band will also appear. Doors open at 1:30, music begins at 2 p.m. Tickets are $20 and can be purchased through Sportsman's.
The political notebook, we have a short.
Okay.
The Voice of America employees to stay on leave. An appeals court panel agreed Tuesday to suspend a federal judge's order for the Trump administration to bring hundreds of Voice of America employees back to work from paid leave. The 3-judge panel from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit issued a stay pending the government's appeal of the lower court's March 17th ruling. More than 1,000 employees of Voice of America will remain on administrative leave while the appeals court weighs the case, a process that could take months. U.S. District Judge Royce Lamberth ordered President Trump's administration to restore the government-run Voice of America's operation after it had effectively been shut down a year ago. Voice of America has broadcast news reports to countries around the world since its formation during World War II. Before Trump's executive order, it had operated in 49 different languages, broadcasting to 362 million people.
You are listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Thursday, April 2nd. On your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Pat Lamont.
and Ruth Nowotniak. And our City and Region section of the paper, new state audit criticizes OTB's financial oversight. This is written by Stephen Watson, who's a news staff reporter. Western regional off-track betting leaders didn't do enough to keep agency spending in check, failed to respond to concerning trends in the horse racing and gaming industries, and often made decisions that lacked transparency, a new state audit found. The report released Wednesday by the state controller, Thomas DiNapoli, sharply criticized oversight of the organization's finances by its administration and board of directors. The audit from DiNapoli's office primarily covered a period when a previous leadership team managed the Western Regional OTB, however, and the report stated that the current administration, led by former Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown, has begun making changes based on the office's recommendations. The Western Regional Off-Track Betting Corporation is under pressure as revenues decline from its horse racing and wagering operations, and it must rein in costs and strengthen its financial operations, DiNapoli said in a statement. The corporation is supposed to benefit local participating municipalities and taxpayers, and even as the gambling industry changes, the board can adapt without losing that mission. I'm encouraged by steps the current board and new management have taken and urge continued progress. Among the audit's main findings, board members allowed OTB management to make key financial decisions with little oversight. OTB leaders didn't provide the board with timely budgetary reports. The agency saw significant cost overruns due to lax monitoring. And spending on employee salaries and consultant fees rose while revenue from betting fell. In response, Brown, the organization's president and CEO, and Dennis Bassett, the chair of its board of directors, noted OTB distributed more money than ever to its member municipalities last year, despite revenue declines from some of its operations. The corporation remains focused on long-term sustainability while ensuring compliance with applicable laws, statutory requirements, and governance standards, they wrote to the Comptroller's office. Western Regional OTB operates the Batavia Downs Hotel, video gaming casino floor, and live harness horse racing, as well as off-site betting parlors. Its board has representatives from the cities of Buffalo and Rochester and each of 15 counties in the region, and it is those municipalities that receive a share of OTB revenues. The state controller's audit, launched last year, covers a period from January 21 to December 24, as well as some contracts dating to 2020. This time frame is largely prior to leadership changes that stemmed from legislation approved by the Democratic-controlled state legislature in 23. The legislation gave more voting weight on the OTB Board of Directors to the region's most populous communities and swept in a set of new board members. Henry Wojtaszek, an influential area Republican who has served as president and CEO since 2016, announced he would step down at the end of 2024. The board of directors voted in September 24 to hire Brown, a Democrat who was then in his fifth term as Buffalo's mayor. Brown pushed through several reforms after taking his OTB role. Some followed a pair of earlier audits from the Comptroller's office released in 21. One audit from that year found that Western Regional OTB spent at least $121,000 on tickets for the Bills, Sabres, and Rochester Americans, as well as concerts, food, and alcohol for board members and other employees without state-regulated oversight. A second audit found that Wojtaszek didn't promptly reimburse the agency $3,484 for his personal use of an official vehicle. At the time, DiNapoli said Western Regional OTB needs to clean up its operations. 3 years later, some Democrats and watchdog groups blasted the OTB board for approving more than $500,000 in combined severance payments for Wojtaszek and two other senior agency leaders. While some critics asked Dinopoly to audit the severance payments, the State Controller's Office said its review would cover the OTB's overall finances instead. The audit found OTB administrators and board members failed to closely monitor the organization's finances and never sufficiently addressed the declining handle, the total amount of money wagered on horse racing and through other gaming activities. Failing to respond to this sagging handle puts at risk the money OTB distributes to its member cities and counties, and the money the organization returns to the state's horse racing industry, the audit stated. The handle fell 34% between 21 and 24, the controller reported, though total operating revenues increased over this period because OTB took in more video lottery terminal and hotel revenue. Over the 4-year audit period, OTB revenues increased by 7%, while expenses rose by 22%. Driven by a 38% increase in salaries and a 23% increase in professional service contracts. Board members let OTB managers sign contracts for lawyers and consultants that exceeded the board-approved spending on these services by $1 million. Many lawyers and consultants hired by OTB management failed to fully document the work they performed for the organization, the Controller's Office reported. For example, OTB management paid one law firm over $240,000 for work unrelated to a contract without receiving detailed invoices for this work.
Independent Health logs $64 million loss. It was a tale of two halves in 2025 for Independent Health, which on Wednesday reported a net loss of $64.2 million on revenues of more than $2.6 billion for the year. The first half of 2025 was tough. A severe flu season increased hospitalization costs and about $10 million of long-delayed claims finally arrived from local hospitals that were affected by the massive ransomware attack in 2024 that crippled healthcare payment processor Change Healthcare. But things turned around in the second half of 2025. Administrative efficiencies and operational improvements, such as converting members to less expensive but highly similar drugs, started to take hold. In the fourth quarter, Independent Health logged an operational surplus, a big moment for a health plan that recorded a net loss of $66 million in 2024 and a net loss of $193 million in 2023. Our strategy to address rising pharmacy costs, optimize care delivery, and enhance operational efficiencies is producing real results, said Jared Gross, Independent Health's Chief Financial Officer. We are trending towards significant improvement in 2026, and our organization is well positioned to continue delivering on our mission to provide affordable access to quality health care while improving the health and well-being of the communities we serve. It all gives Independent Health, which has 1,600 workers when including its affiliate companies, some momentum in 2026 and heading into its planned affiliation with Schenectady-based MVP Healthcare. The affiliation needs regulatory approvals, which aren't expected until the fourth quarter of this year, but the partnership between Independent Health and MVP should give the organizations more scale and open opportunities to share resources. For instance, Independent Health's pharmacy benefit manager, Pharmacy Benefit Dimensions, and its specialty pharmacy, Reliance RX, are expected to grow once the affiliation with MVP is complete. Despite the improvements in the second half of 2025, last year's results marked the fifth consecutive year that Independent Health recorded an annual net loss. In August, the health plan decided to eliminate 59 positions as it sought to cut expenses, streamline operations, and boost efficiency. Independent Health is the last of the big three local health plans to report its annual results. Highmark Western and Northern New York, the local affiliate of Pittsburgh-based Highmark Health, reported a net income of $101 million on a revenue of $3.1 billion in 2025. That snapped the local Highmark's affiliate streak of 4 straight years of financial losses. Rochester-based Excelis Blue Cross Blue Shield, which does business as Univera in Western New York, reported an operating loss in 2025 of $108 million on revenue of $7.5 billion, but strong returns in the stock market helped Excelis finish 2025 with a net margin of 2% or $150 million. While independent health is improving, it is still operating within a challenging environment that includes higher costs for drugs, medical care, and ambulatory surgery. Pharmaceutical costs remain a huge struggle. Even with independent health's progress in converting members to lower cost alternatives, the health plan still saw a 12% increase last year in prescription drug and specialty medication costs. It's very hard to keep up with new medicines, Gross said. They're coming out at a very high price points and they're very good. GLP is a great example. They came out and everybody is benefiting from them, but somebody has to pay for them. That's coming from our coffers right now. Independent Health's financial services reserves stand at $242 million, and the health plan expects to grow that further by the end of 2026. Independent Health now serves about 325 members across all lines of business, which is down from 350 members reported in 2024. The decline in insured membership was anticipated, which Independent Health said reflects broader market shifts as large employers continue to transition to out-of-state parent companies.
County may allow youths to hunt deer with firearms. This is by Sandra Tan, a news staff reporter. Erie County is the last remaining county outside of the New York City area to ban 12 and 13-year-old youths from hunting deer with a firearm. That has been a sore spot in a county that sells the most hunting licenses by far of any county in the state, but expect that to change soon. Strong bipartisan support now exists in the Erie County Legislature for the county to opt into the youth hunting provision to allow trained adolescent children ages 12 and 13 to use a firearm or a crossbow to hunt deer. Even if County Executive Mark Poloncarz, who opposes the provision, were to veto the measure, a Buffalo News canvass of legislator votes on Wednesday indicated that 8 or more votes exist to override any veto. That is a big difference from 5 years ago when the legislature voted 6-5 in favor of opting into the state law. At the time, the law was new, and despite some bipartisan support, a majority of Democrats opposed the opt-in measure, expressing concerns about the danger of children that young handling weapons in the woods. Poloncarz vetoed the measure, citing the inherent danger of allowing youth that young to shoot deer. I'm getting a different vibe this time around, said legislator Frank Todaro from Lancaster, who originally sponsored the law. Before the state law was first adopted in 21, children as young as 12 were already permitted, with adults' oversight, to use firearms to shoot small game, including game birds, squirrels, rabbits, and coyotes. But New York State was the only state to forbid youth from using firearms to shoot deer until they were 14. Instead, those adolescents were limited to hunting deer with a regular compound bow and arrow. State law changed in 21 so that children as young as 12 would be allowed to use a rifle, shotgun, muzzleloader, or crossbow with supervision of a parent, guardian, or experienced adult mentor aged 21 or older, if counties opt into the state provision. Poloncarz vetoed a county opt-in measure, raising concerns about the dangers of allowing children that young to handle firearms. He also referenced his time as a youth hockey coach, saying his experience reinforced his belief that children that young cannot be trusted to responsibly handle guns for hunting purposes. Pete Anderson said Wednesday that Poloncarz's position on the matter is unchanged, but it may not matter. So far, 9 legislators have said they favor or lean in favor of supporting the youth hunting law, one more than the 8 required to override the county executive veto. That includes the legislature's 4 Republicans and Democrats John Gilmore of Hamburg, John Bargnesi, and Michael Koshoyan of the town of Tonawanda, Lawrence Dupree of Buffalo, and Chairman Timothy Myers of Cheektowaga. Jean Vanal of Amherst remains opposed, and Tasha St. Jean Tard would not be reached for comment Wednesday afternoon. That would make this opted-in decision one of the few veto-proof votes taken by the Democratic-controlled legislature in opposition to Poloncar's decision. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 15 minutes past the hour, and we will now go to our sports section and our Mike Harrington article on the Sabres. Sabres are finally on precipice of playoffs. One more win. It doesn't have to come Thursday in Ottawa, but that would obviously be the most convenient way for this situation to play out, and it would continue to help with the quest for a division title and top seed in the Eastern Conference. One more win for the Buffalo Sabres to take that major first step this fan base has waited 14 years to see. One more win to push all those memories of tanking and 18-game losing streaks and visiting fans chuckling their way to victories in the seats of KeyBank Center back into the recesses of our minds. It's relatively delicious that the Sabres can finally clinch a playoff berth and end the longest postseason drought in NHL history with a win at Canadian Tire Center in suburban Ottawa. The Sabres and Senators, of course, split a pair of bitter playoff series in 2006 and 7. There's not a lot of love lost between the current editions either. Good luck finding too many fans of Ottawa captain Bradley Tkachuk in the Sabres locker room. The Sabres didn't know they had reached a win and they're-in scenario in the immediate aftermath of Tuesday's 4-3 nail-biter over the New York Islanders. And Wednesday is a day off, so they won't be heard from again until after Thursday's morning skate in Ottawa. Tuesday's victory continued their methodical approach to a season no one could have imagined. They are an NHL best 14-2-2 since the Olympic break. They have reached 100 points for the first time since 2010 and became the first post-1970 club to post 2,000 regular season wins. The Sabres have played 4 straight grinding affairs since returning home from California and have gone 2-1-1, with 3 decided by a goal. They beat the Islanders when Alex Took made a nifty feed to Peyton Krebs for the tie-breaking goal with 3 minutes, 1 second left. They're showing they can play the kind of style that wins in April, May, and June, just as much as they can win games like that 8-7 classic against Tampa last month. That unnamed opposing player in last week's Sportsnet 32 Thoughts column that accused the Sabres of playing river hockey probably needs to zip it. They can play it any way you want, dude. The bet here, by the way, is that it's a Lightning player. There's no doubt there's a little tweak going on from the club when you notice it suddenly started playing Gilbert Perreault's rendition of Proud Mary from a long-ago alumni game on the Jumbotron after its last 2 home wins. What's the key lyric, of course? You know it. Rollin', rollin', rollin' on the river. Games are getting harder. Sometimes you got to learn the hard way. But more times than not, I think our group's going to be up for the challenge, Took said earlier in the day, and I think that's something we're focusing on, coming in and being ready for whatever opponent comes our way and whatever type of game it is. Center Josh Norris, who assisted on both of Buffalo's power play goals but also absorbed a nasty hit from behind from Islanders captain Anders Lee, talked about how the team hasn't gotten flustered all season. Coach Lindy Ruff has routinely called it about being comfortable with being uncomfortable.
How Brady plans to protect Allen from himself. Josh Allen has taken to calling Joe Brady by his new title. Honestly, the hardest thing is it's driving me crazy calling me coach, Brady said Tuesday, I hate that. Take it as a sign of respect from the team's star quarterback to his new head coach, who was promoted in January after spending the past 2+ seasons as Allen's offensive coordinator. Plenty was made of Allen sitting in for most of the Bills' head coach interviews, but the franchise was in a bit of a no-win situation in that regard. If Allen didn't participate, people would question why the franchise quarterback wasn't involved in at least sharing his opinion on what was going to be a crucial hire. Having Allen involved, however, opened the franchise to critics who felt as though the quarterback was meddling. Even though other interviews I was in, I'm literally FaceTiming or I'm talking with the quarterback, Brady said. So that wasn't something out of the ordinary. I think it was important for him just from a lot of perspectives. After Brady got the job, Allen came up to the new head coach's office to deliver a message. He let me know straight up, "I'm not the reason you got the job," Brady said during his media availability at the NFL's annual meeting. "You got this job, and now we're in this together. Like any head coach and quarterback, you're attached at the hip." Given their working relationship, which started with Brady as Allen's quarterback's coach in the 2022 season, the two are close. They also hold each other to high standards. That's not to say that they are always in agreement on everything. There are going to be issues that are going to come up. "You're going to see me on that sideline mad at him," Brady said. "You're going to see him on the sideline, what the hell are we doing? That's football. That's human nature. But we always got to be able to go back to what we said in the beginning, when there was no emotion in it. Even if he is in a different office and will be on the sideline instead." Of the coach's booth, Brady sees his relationship with Allen growing stronger. In his new role, Brady was asked whether his willingness to call running plays for Allen will change. "I never called a game or game plan with the mindset that this might take a couple of years off Josh's career, but I won't be here. Look, I love that guy," Brady said. "I've said this 100 times, and you're going to hear it another 100 times saying it. I want Josh Allen to get everything he deserves in his life and his career. He put so much into this game, and all I want is for him to be holding what he deserves." Brady is no stranger to the need to protect Allen. The quarterback is simply wired to try to make plays. At times, that can be his detriment, like at the end of the first half against the Broncos in the divisional round of the playoffs. Allen has to know in that situation that a turnover can't happen. His lost fumble handed the Broncos a field goal in what ended up being a 3-point Denver victory. Of course, Brady also has to know that Allen's default setting is set to score. He's going to try to do that at every single snap. Sometimes that means calling plays that protect the quarterback from himself. The year that he couldn't throw with his elbow, he played against Minnesota in overtime loss during the 2022 season, and we said, "Whatever you can, you just can't take a hit." First drive, he's open field, tries to run, and the guy over, Brady said. That's how his mind works. The more that you tell a guy he can't do something, he's going to go like, "Oh, you think I can't do it?" That's what makes him him. I'm always going to try to protect him. I know we don't get where we need to without Josh Allen.
Expect tighter games in the Final Four. The formalities are over. The women's NCAA tournament is about to get real. A tournament marked by blowouts is down to the Final Four, and the teams in Phoenix are the ones everybody expected to be there. UConn has been number one team in the Associated Press Top 25 since it won a national championship last year. South Carolina, UCLA, and Texas each have held the number 2, 3, and 4 spots. This year marks the first time since 1996 that the Final Four is made up of the same teams as the previous year, and it's the first time since 2018 that all 4 number 1 seeds made it this far. The first national semifinal Friday pits South Carolina against UConn in a 2025 championship game rematch. Texas meets UCLA in the second semifinal. The championship game is set for Sunday. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 25 minutes past the hour, and we will go to asking Eric, see what he has to say. My brother just released a book. As I was reading his acknowledgments on the online sample, I was blown away that he disclosed a very personal incident that happened when we were children. I have been going to therapy sessions for years discussing things that happened to me as a child. It was very shocking to read this and caused a couple nights of no sleep. When I discussed it with him, I lost my temper and said a few things and raised my voice. He finally said sorry on a text a couple of days later, but it really wasn't heartfelt. In the acknowledgments, he even gave a shout out to his dogs. The only thing he said about me was, quote, my older brother, when he described the incident in question. Now that a couple of weeks have passed and I feel better about it, now, was I wrong for wanting a heads up, a warning from him before it was released? A chance to say my opinion about not really wanting that part released? Signed, Mad Brother. Dear brother, you're not wrong at all. He owed you a heads up at the very least. But he should have asked your permission before sharing something personal, even if it wasn't something sensitive. There are so many points in a publishing journey during which a writer can send a draft to other people. He failed in his duty as a writer and as a sibling, and by not offering a meaningful apology, he made it worse. You have the right to tell your own stories, and we have the right to tell our own stories in our own time. Had he written a memoir, there might have been a lot of overlap between what story is his to tell and what's yours. He'd still be responsible for talking things through with you beforehand. But an acknowledgement section is meant to thank and honor those who supported a writer along their path to publication. This did not achieve that aim. You write that you're feeling better. I'm glad about that. You may decide that what's healthiest is to leave the past in the past. That's fine. But if you feel compelled to address it with your brother again, either to be sure that you've been heard or to see what remedies he can offer in changing the electronic copies or future editions, don't hesitate to do so. Dear Eric, I'm hoping you can give me your thoughts on the situation between me and my estranged brother in another state. I'm his older sister by 11 years. We're of different political parties, and although I am not vocal about politics, he has decided our younger sister and I represent everything he hates about the other party. His communications have been full of anger and obscenities, and saying he wishes I would just die. I've blocked his messages, but I sent an email wishing him happy birthday, just that, nothing more. He came back raging with obscenities and the usual wish for my death. It's amazing how he's changed in the last few years. He has had several surgeries, and I think maybe his brain has been affected. I don't know if his wife shares his politics and encourages his anger. We weren't in contact much even before the present situation. Do you think it's possible to diffuse his anger so there can be some kind of contact? If so, how to proceed? Signed, Different Sides. Dear Sides, in general, change is possible for all of us, but it seems unlikely that you're in the best position to effect that change in him. Moreover, this isn't your responsibility, particularly after a history of such vicious attacks. In this case, it may be helpful to think about what he's actually angry about and what could possibly be done to assuage the said anger. If you'd committed an offense against him, for instance, you could apologize and seek to make amends. And in time, his anger may fade. But from your telling, it doesn't seem that you've done anything, so the burden isn't on you. This is not the behavior of someone who is looking for a way to connect, nor is it the behavior of someone who is looking to convince you. His response makes conversation all but impossible. That's not on you, and it isn't about what you believe or what he believes. People disagree about all kinds of things and still find ways of being in a relationship with each other. He's chosen violent language as his primary and seemingly only form of contact. You might consider reaching out to his wife to express your concern or to see if there's anything you can do. But proceed with caution. The contact that you want may not be the kind of contact he's willing to have.
School choice is a myth, new UB study reveals. Buffalo Public School has long touted its model of school choice, where families have the freedom to pick where their kids attend school. But according to a University at Buffalo study released in March, most parents of kindergarten through 8th grade students applying to the district are not getting their first choice of school, or any choice, actually. 55% of these students are assigned a school they didn't apply for, said Simone Freed, principal investigator for the Buffalo School Choice Project and an assistant professor at UB, citing 2 years of application data. And it actually got worse when we replicated it with high school data. The UB study was spurred by Samuel Radford III and the Western New York Educational Equity Task Force, which sought hard data to evaluate if anecdotes repeated over several years were true. That the belief Buffalo students could have their school of choice was a myth. So, choice is really not a choice, reacted Buffalo School member Larry Scott after the report was presented during a March work session. Themes emerged. The choice system tends to favor wealthy families with transportation flexibility, shows a large portion of students eyeing the same few schools, and frequently leaves parents feeling confused or helpless. Radford urges the school board to lead the design of a system that accommodates parents and student choice while also ensuring seats for students in neighborhood schools, should they want them, in order to reduce the district's ballooning transportation costs. We feel like the school board has an opportunity to pass a resolution to start the process of us moving forward something where everybody can get more of what they want, Radford said. Not just a few people getting what they want and then everybody else just having to accept what they get. Why is this work happening? Historical and financial factors have led Buffalo schools to evaluate a primary system on which the district relies. Buffalo Schools has for the last 50 years trusted a model purporting to give children hope and flexibility for their education within a city with a history of racial and economic segregation. That choice was meaningful to students like former Superintendent Tanya Williams-Knight, who spoke up last school year. It was a very good thing to get me out of my zip code, she said, even if it was for 30 to a 45-minute ride. But the choice model has other effects, including costly and inefficient student transportation. Buffalo Schools is amid a 5-year, $460 million contract with Yellow Bus partner First Student. In a tense debate last year, Scott noted on one morning 15 different buses picked up students on 2 blocks of his street. Critics has also questioned the efficiency of bus routing, which the district handles. Scott advocates for increasing opportunities for Buffalo elementary students to attend schools in their immediate communities, citing Chicago's schools' plan to heavily resource neighborhood schools without eliminating choice. Neighborhood schools would encourage more students to walk to school, streamline and shorten bus routes, and facilitate greater family engagement. Previous mentions of neighborhood schools sparked an outcry from veteran board members who argued the result would lead to a more segregated system in which marginalized populations would have greater difficulty escaping generational struggle. The data shows that schools are already segregated, Redford said. How do you segregate schools that are already segregated? UB's study revealed more than half of Buffalo school students who entered the placement lottery were not accepted into any school listed on their applications. Fried and her UB team, which included Fabian Barrick, Finn Gehring, and Ngo Han, received Buffalo Schools applications data for 2023 and 2024, which amounted to 2,687 entries in which students aimed for seats in criteria schools, which required tests or auditions, as well as non-criteria schools for which students ranked their preferred destinations. The UB team found 53% of those applicants listed only criteria schools, such as gifted and talented programs at Frederick Law Olmsted School 64 and Arthur O. Eves School of Distinction, while 39% listed only non-criteria schools. Only 8% listed a combination of criteria and non-criteria schools. The data dealt with applications and acceptance, not whether the applicant ultimately attended the school. Families tend to either want a specific top choice or the closest, safest acceptable school, said Fried. The researchers listed schools with the highest shares of neighborhood attendees: Southside, Harriet Ross Tubman, Highgate Heights, Hillary Park, Lorraine, and North Park. Only 3 of those are community schools, designed to enroll a larger proportion of neighborhood residents, as well as provide after-school and weekend activities featuring community partners. The UB team supplemented the data by interviewing a diverse group of 28 parents who applied to one district elementary school. These parent experiences indicated a volatile, obstacle-ridden process that favors financial flexibility and personal advocacy. A lot of parents had really inconvenient or protracted paths where they had many different steps to try to get to the school they ultimately desired. Interviewed parents were identified by pseudonyms. Harmony, a single mother of 4, told interviewers she once had 3 of her kids in a neighborhood Buffalo school, with the 4th too young to start. After one child was identified with a disability and another transferred due to bullying, Harmony realized she would have to juggle children in 4 different schools. She just can't decide which is my best next move, Fried said. It's complicated for her to understand how to best serve her kids. The spread of Harmony's kids prompted mention of another trend. 7 of the 28 interviews enrolled children in more than one school type: district, charter, or private. For parents like Sarah in a dual income family with a flexible schedule, the application process offers opportunity without the risk of unwanted placement. She chose to leave the district for a private school and leverage her advantage to get convenience and certainty. Meanwhile, applying year after year to enter her ideal Buffalo public school, she can't afford to stay outside the system unless she receives that top choice. Demographics played a role too. Less than half of the city's eligible population of white students enroll in Buffalo schools, and of white students enrolling, nearly 60% apply only to criteria schools. We hypothesize BPS becomes more low income overall, and certain schools become particularly more low income on average because of this pattern. Amber, a Black and Native American mother, attended the district's Saturday academies to engage with neighborhood school to which she hoped to send her child. For several years, Amber did not get her top choice, attempting a charter in a different Buffalo school. Nothing changed until a crisis when Amber's child was left on a bus, prompted the principal at her desired neighborhood school to open a seat. We found that this was not uncommon, where people would eventually get a school that they preferred or wanted, but it took advocating directly or knowing somebody or having a conversation outside of the formal model. How badly is change needed? Questions remain over whether UB study data should inspire change, and if change is necessary. Should changes tweak the existing setup, like modernizing the district's central registration or better marketing the early December application deadline? Or should they involve an overhaul, perhaps coupled with the coming reduction of district schools? Various district leaders and parents were skeptical about the study, noting it lacked peer review and interpreted limited data. Freed, who too said the name's research prompted follow-up questions. How do caregivers who don't have the option to exit the public schools identify their second and third choice schools? Freed asked. Is it really based on safety and car access, or are there other priorities like academics, enrichment and culture, and community guiding these decisions? Is there any evidence the community schools model has improved desirability for families in those neighborhoods? Regardless of next steps, the study showed Buffalo parents desire a better experience in applying for Buffalo schools. I wish it were a little easier, said Amber. I wish we weren't all fighting for our kids to go to one specific school. I can't imagine having 4 children, sending them to four different schools.
Oh
my
geez.
God, that must be chaos.
God. And now we'll do an Associated Press article. Justices seem skeptical on Trump's effort to limit birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court seemed poised Wednesday to reject President Trump's restrictions on birthright citizenship in a consequential case magnified by his unparalleled presence in the courtroom. Conservative and liberal justices questioned whether Trump's order declaring that children born to parents who are in the United States illegally or temporarily are not American citizens comports with either the Constitution or federal law. Arguments lasted more than 2 hours in a crowded courtroom that included not only Trump, the first sitting president to attend arguments at the nation's highest court, but also Attorney General Pam Bondi and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and in seats reserved for the justices' guests, actor Robert De Niro. Trump spent just over an hour inside the courtroom for arguments made by the Republican administration's top Supreme Court lawyer, Solicitor General D. John Sauer. The president departed shortly after lawyer Cecilia Wang began her presentation in defense of broad birthright citizenship. After court adjourned, Trump posted on Truth Social, "We are the only country in the world stupid enough to allow birthright citizenship. About 36 countries, nearly all of them in the Americas, guarantee citizenship to children born on their territory." Trump heard Sauer face one skeptical question after another. Justices asked about the legal basis for the order and voiced more practical concerns. Is this happening in the delivery room? Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson asked, drilling down into how the government would figure out who's entitled to citizenship and who's not. Chief Justice John Roberts suggested that Sauer was relying on quirky exceptions to citizenship to make a broad argument about people who are in the country illegally. I'm not quite sure how you can get to that big group from such tiny and sort of idiosyncratic examples, Roberts said. Clarence Justice Thomas sounded the most likely among the 9 justices to side with Trump. How much of the debates around the 14th Amendment had anything to do with immigration, Thomas asked, pointing out that the purpose of the amendment was to grant citizenship to black people, including free slaves. The justices heard Trump's appeal of a lower court ruling from New Hampshire that struck down the citizenship restrictions, one of several courts that have blocked them. The restrictions have not taken effect anywhere in the country. The case frames another test of Trump's assertions of executive power that defy long-standing precedent for a court that has largely ruled in the president's favor, but with some notable exceptions that Trump has responded to with snarky personnel criticisms of the justices. A definitive ruling is expected by early summer. The birthright citizenship order, which Trump signed the first day of his second term, is part of his Republican administration's broad immigration crackdown. Birthright citizenship is the first Trump immigration-related policy to reach the court for a final ruling. The justices previously struck down global tariffs that Trump imposed under emergency powers law that had never been used that way. Trump reacted furiously to the late February tariffs decision, saying he was ashamed of the justices who ruled against him and calling them unpatriotic. He issued a preemptive broadside against the court on Sunday on his Truth Social platform. Quote, "Birthright citizenship is not about rich people from China and the rest of the world who want their children and hundreds of thousands more for pay to ridiculously become citizens of the United States of America. It is about the babies of slaves," the president wrote. "Dumb judges and justices will not a great country make." Trump's order would upend the view that the Constitution's 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, and federal law since 1940 confer citizenship on everyone born on American soil, with narrow exceptions for the children of foreign diplomats and those born to a foreign occupying force. The 14th Amendment was intended to ensure that black people, including former slaves, had citizenship, though the citizenship clause is written more broadly. Quote, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside," it reads. In a series of decisions, lower courts have struck down the executive order as illegal, or likely so, under the Constitution and federal law. The decisions have invoked the High Court's 1898 ruling in Wong Kim Ark, which held that the U.S.-born child of Chinese nationals was a citizen. The Trump administration argues that the common view of citizenship is wrong. The court should use the case to set straight long-enduring misconceptions about the Constitution's meaning, Sauer wrote. Appearing before the court, Sauer said unrestricted citizenship encourages illegal immigration and birth tourism by pregnant women who visit the U.S. only to give birth. Roberts asked Sauer how significant birth tourism is. "No one knows for sure," he said, adding, "But of course, we're in a new world now, where 8 billion people are a plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen." The Chief Justice replied, "It's a new world. It's the same Constitution." Justice Neil Gorsuch, a Trump appointee, also revealed his skepticism of Sauer's position when the Solicitor General said the 1898 Supreme Court case should be read to endorse Trump's view of citizenship. "I'm not sure how much you want to rely on Wong Kim Ark," Gorsuch said. Yet another conservative justice appointed by Trump, Brett Kavanaugh, suggested to Wang that the court could resolve the case in Wang's favor, either with a short opinion saying that Wong Kim Ark case was correctly decided and it means Trump's order is unconstitutional. Or, he said, the justices could avoid constitutional questions and find that the order is illegal under federal law. No court has accepted the Trump administration's argument, and lawyers for pregnant women whose children would be affected by the order said the Supreme Court should not be the first to do so, Wang told the justices.
And our TV article, Gaining from Loss. In the Madison, grieving becomes real for Michelle Pfeiffer. Michelle Pfeiffer embraced the lighter moments in the Madison, ones that pulled her away from the series' theme of grieving. The audience, she says, needs relief. It's just too much raw emotion, Pfeiffer says. That's why the comedy is so beautiful. In the limited series, Pfeiffer plays a woman who goes to a family hunting cabin to discover that her late husband liked about it. The stay helps her flesh out the parts of his life and give her new purpose. It's learning how to rebuild after everything you have known just falls apart, she says. Her husband, played by Kurt Russell, dies while on one of his getaways. She has to go there to identify his body and with her children decides to stay in the cabin. Written by Yellowstone creator Taylor Sheridan, The Madison dissects the grief process and how people approach it. There's this insatiable curiosity to discover this side of him she never knew, Pfeiffer says of her character, and it's a lot about holding on to him. The flashbacks, the husband is seen interacting with family and friends, enjoying the rugged life in Montana. There's a whole side to him that she was begging to share with her and their children, Pfeiffer explains. There's a tremendous amount of regret working on her. To deal with the darkness, Pfeiffer forces herself to let it go at the end of each shooting day and the weekend. I tried not to give myself permission to actually live in it, she says. While there are moments that proved interesting, the Oscar nominee says she doesn't know if she could live a rustic life. The cabin lacks indoor plumbing and boasts minimal electricity. I would definitely need a real bathroom and some coffee, she says. Interestingly, Pfeiffer said yes to the project without reading a word of Sheridan's script. As in television, a lot of times the scripts come kind of close to shooting, and that was the case here. So there wasn't a lot of time to do my typical preparing, which I think was a blessing, Pfeiffer says. I was forced to work more instinctually. I tried to plan things out, and there was just no room for that. It allowed me to show up and be present and trust the words and let things happen. The weather with 60-mile-per-hour winds became a challenge. Your hair was just all over the place, Pfeiffer says. All of that just became so distracting and also really stressful for everyone around just trying to do their job. Sheridan, she says, spoke passionately about her character and the family dynamics, which he presented the series concept. Stacy Kleiber, the character she plays, was someone I could relate to. Then, too, the series theme was compelling. When you get to my age, you've had enough people close to you pass away, she says, and so you don't have to look too far for inspiration for that, unfortunately. What's really surprising is how much it affects men. Maybe it speaks to grief in a way that they've experienced, but haven't really been able to express. And maybe it takes them by surprise. People have lost their homes in a fire. People have lost jobs they expected to retire in. Loss is really a universal experience. Pfeiffer says working with Sheridan was a reason for her to return to television, but also the quality of the material that I've been seeing on television, I've been so envious of, she says, and for a while now, I've wanted very much to be a part of it. The Madison airs on Paramount.
And now we're going to read the My View article. My View is a first-person column open to all Western New Yorkers for submission of publications. Sports has many spiritual parallels. At this time of year, some are focusing on opening day, while others eagerly fill out their March Madness brackets. It is also the Easter season. For many, that means a Lenten period of reflection. There seems to be little in common, but I have always felt a kind of spiritual inherent in sport. Sports, like faith, can be transformative. An achievement or even a great effort becomes a shared experience that settles into the collective consciousness. In an increasingly fragmented world, sports provides one of the few remaining communal experiences. Often we even use the language of the divine when talking about sport. One of the most famous goals in World Cup soccer history from Diego Maradona is referred to as being guided by the hand of God. A pass thrown in desperation by the quarterback is a Hail Mary. Countless small American towns characterize their passion for high school football as a religion. And who can ever forget sportscaster Al Michaels asking the entire nation, "Do you believe in miracles?" There is also disappointment. I watched American figure skating phenom Ilya Malinin experience just that at the recent Olympics. Having revolutionized his own sport, no competitor was considered more of a sure thing than for individual gold. Instead, he struggled mightily and finished 8th. As he began to skate, Malinin said, "All the traumatic moments of my life just started flooding my head. So many negative thoughts. I could not handle it." Similarly, our faith will be plagued by doubts and negativity at times. Rather than indulging those moments, we can choose to respond to them with renewed purpose and perspective. Instead of isolating, we can reach out. Minutes after his loss, Malinin walked to the gold medal winner, Kazakhstan's Mikhail Sharadov. He held him in a long embrace. It was a genuine moment of sportsmanship and, yes, grace in the shadow of personal heartbreak. Now retired, Duke's Mike Krzyzewski is the most celebrated coach in the history of college basketball. He has cited his faith as the foundation for his success. His players recited the Lord's Prayer before every game while he himself prayed the rosary. He offers this simple insight: you can see and you can listen, but you have to have moments in which you feel. Many sports writers and spectators who witnessed Secretariat run the Belmont Stakes in 1973 have referenced it as a profoundly spiritual moment. They believe that such unparalleled ability had to have a divine providence. In sports, we strive to reach our potential, to overcome obstacles and realize the ultimate goal. Our spiritual lives could be similarly described. When the news constantly provokes dismay, it is worth embracing something that instills joy. Team can mean family, community, or even country. In 1980, a hockey team made up of unknown young college men lifted the entire nation to a moment of ecstasy. Anything can do that must have something of the spiritual about it. So the next time the puck drops, a pitch is thrown, or a basket is made, let's appreciate that it has the potential to send ripples of meaning far beyond the game itself. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for April 2nd. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Pat Lamont
and Ruth Nowotniak, and thank you for listening.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.